Know thyself. Know thy divine self. It's one thing to know that which is more obvious of our makeup of our soul, which is the nefesh hamaskelis, the intellectual soul. The intellectual soul understands right from wrong, understands that there's a higher purpose, a greater purpose to live, as opposed to the animal soul, which is primarily the emotive aspect of the animal soul that just feels self, wants to fill self with pleasure, with self-fulfillment. Could be material pleasure, could spiritual pleasure, but it's all for self. The intellectual soul has the capacity of the mind over the heart, knowing right from wrong, and therefore understanding something and influencing the heart, that the heart should then act in an appropriate, proper manner. But then we have the godly soul itself, how it interplays with us. That is on a different level, a whole different manner on how the intelligence and the emotions work. Welcome to Tanya today. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zich and Kedoshim in Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. We conclude today the 15th letter. This letter, Alter Rebbe is giving us deep awareness of the makeup of our soul. What we've spoken till now was the intellectual soul, nefesh hamaskelis, as it's called. That is very human. And we understood intelligence, Chabad, how it, as a parent, wants to teach their child something. And we gave that as the metaphor on how that is done with the intelligence, how that's done with the 6 emotions that we spoke about, right? Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Mal, the Yesod. We explained it in great detail, each one on how that particular emotion adds to the desire of the parent wanting to teach the child. But now we move on, not to the rational soul, but the rational soul it comes from klipa. The good part of klipa is noiga, there's good there. Therefore, you could use your rationality in a good way. Of course, you could use your rationality also in a negative way, right? If it's not based on faith in God, so then it's based on self-fulfillment, filling self up, well, then you're going to do what your desire is and rather what a higher purpose is. But now we go to that which is our divine soul. That's literally a part of God. So its attributes, since it's a part of God, it doesn't know anything else but God. That means the attributes will be direct to God, as opposed to indirect, like a parent wanting to train their child and to give them over some, important teachings or important lesson in life. But this is purely concentrated on godliness. In other words, the love that the divine soul feels is because all it wants is to cleave to God. Why? Just because. That's a difficult thing for us to sometimes process. What do you mean, just because? Not for a reason? That would be rational. The rational soul would do for a reason, right? There's no reason here because it's a part of God. So it wants to cleave in that which it's a part of. Again, why? Just because. So it wants to practice chesed, kindness. Why? Because through that you cleave to God and to God's attributes. You cleave to his divine kindness. If it's in order to get something from God, then that's not cleaving to God. That's desiring what you can get from him, right? That's why what we're talking about, not necessarily not necessarily I'm doing this. And we shouldn't fool ourselves and think, yeah, I'm doing it. I'm holding by this. No, no, no. Right, right, right. We're motivated to do kindness, but not because we want to cleave to God, but either it makes me comfortable. I'd feel guilty if I didn't do that act of kindness. I'd there's a great benefit that will come out of this act of kindness, right? All those things. And that's primarily what motivates us. And that's what we spoke about the Nefesh Maskelis, the intellectual soul that brings us to do an act of kindness. This is a very different league that we're talking about. Now, important that we should be aware of this, mindful of this, um, in order to know, that there is yet greater than where we're holding, right? In actual, in actual real time. And likewise, the attribute of gvura, which the internal aspect of that is fear, is in order that those that actually what we just learned in Chumash, right? Those who are wicked need to be chastised. And for me, it's a refrain that I can sanctify myself with that which is permitted, right? That I don't need this. Or put a fence around I put a fence around in order to protect my relationship with Hashem. That if I know this is a trigger, this is a challenge for me, so I put a fence around there so I don't come to that challenge. Right? So that's using your midah, your attribute of gevura, in connection to God, right? Why? Because you have a sense of respect for God, a sense of presence of God, and therefore fear and awe of God. And therefore you don't want to come to sin. Then there is tiferes, which means beauty. Here would be that you're going to seek all ways that you can beautify God's commandments. So in other words, I'm not going to be happy with a regular set of tefillin or mezuzah. I'm going to get a better quality, right? The rational soul says, well, it's sufficient what I have. I fulfill the mitzvah this way, but the divine soul wants to fulfill the mitzvah in the beautified way as best as it can, because through that you're cleaving more so to God. So we might be acting this way. What's important here is to have that awareness, right? Is that necessarily meaning it's coming from our godly soul? Maybe, maybe not, but whatever. The point is, it's important. And we want to cleave to God, to his praises, by praising God, by thoughtful meditation, and to speak his praises, not as empty words, but words that are, truly glorifying God. That's tiferes, right? Beauty that we're glorifying God. That's beautifying. That comes from the neshama, the godly soul, the midah, the attribute of tiferes, right? And likewise, netzach. So here means that I'm going to be triumphant over anything that holds me back in serving God in order to cleave to him. So anything that's going to hold back that from me, that I'm not going to, so I'm going to be triumphant, overcome that. Or if it's in the world out there, that's what King David fought. He fought with the attribute of Netzach because he was fighting God's war. He wasn't fighting to be triumphant in order to be, Napoleon and, be the, the king of the world, right? That's what no, he wanted God to be king of the world. That's why he fought his wars. So anything that was holding back, that he wouldn't be able to prevail to bring the glory of God into the world, he overcame that. That's Netzach. Then you have Hod. Hod is self-abnegation, acknowledging the transcendence, effacing praise of God, that God animates and creates everything, and that we are nothing before him. Even though we can't truly comprehend that idea that we're nothing, because in the end, I feel I have a body, I have an awareness, so there's a sense of me, right? So can't really comprehend that truly. Nevertheless, we can acknowledge and genuinely concede that in absolute truth, that is the case. There's Einay Milvada, there's only but God. Where's that coming from? Coming from the divine soul that truly senses that, right? And also, therefore, coming together with that will be the gratitude that I will show to God for all the favors he's bestowed upon me, and that I shouldn't be ungrateful. That will come as a result, right? The more I feel that I am, the more I'm going to feel my needs, the more I'm going to feel how I'm deserving of my needs. And obviously, the less I'm going to be grateful. I mean, of course, this should be, something I have. But when it comes from the divine soul that you sense not you, right? That you sense that there's nothing else but God and that you are nothing. Well, whatever has been bestowed upon you, oh my gosh. how great is that of God, and I will acknowledge the greatness of God and what he's given to me, and I will offer praiseworthy thanks. Further, Hod also means majesty and splendor. Then we come to Yesod, foundation, which are righteous is the foundation of the world. And it means strong desire to connect. So we remember, we learned that was a strong desire that the parent has wanting to teach their child, right? When you look eye to eye to a person and you teach them and you get feedback, so there's more stronger desire a person has to teach, they teach better, as opposed to when people don't look, they look away or they get busy with other things. That takes away from the one who wants to teach, right? Because there isn't a foundational connection. Right. So that was by the Nefesh HaMaskelis that we explained. Here, the foundation is that I want to cleave with an intense desire and pleasure to the foundation of life, God himself. To God himself, out of strong desire and a wondrous delight that I have in God. Again, pretty powerful. And finally, the last thing is Malchus, is the acceptance of the yoke of God's sovereignty in our service, that we will serve in anything that it is, anything that the master wants, big thing, small thing, whatever it is, doesn't matter. We're there to serve. And that's the final one. Psh, very powerful. Very, very powerful. So now all of these attributes, where do they come from? Or what begets them is Chabad, Chachma Bina V'das, right? Our understanding, our intelligence, right? As we said, the intelligence is like mothers that give birth. They give birth to the divine attributes, these attributes that we're talking about. So Chachma is the source of intellect that apprehends God in his wisdom in a way that is something beyond. Bina is then you come and meditate with a great depth, length, and breadth of an understanding of God. That you can deduce one thing out of another. It's a very, fully developed understanding and comprehension of Hashem. Hashem is creator. Hashem is in my personal relationship with Hashem. Right, my personal relationship with Hashem. Right. That's Bina, yeah. But then in order that it should now be funneled into the emotions, ultimately it's not enough that we have the understanding, but it needs to be, we need to connect with it through Das. And Das brings it to the emotions, the front lobe, that when it becomes real for us, not just an idea, but the idea, because remember, anything about God is going to be abstract. It's going to be ethereal. It's not going to be, putting under a microscope this table over here and understanding the physical makeup of the table and what the elements are in it and so on, that you can get a real grasp of what you see and what you feel and so on, right? This is something that's abstract. So in order that it should become real for us, it takes a meditation, it takes a contemplation, it takes, learning day in, day out, right? When we learn day in, day out, the more we do it, the more it develops and becomes very much more real for us. And that Das. Now, in Das comes two ways. Das Tachtein means through Bina that the understanding becomes very real, and it brings the emotive attributes that we want to bind ourselves with Hashem. From Bina, but then there's Das Elyon that takes directly from Chochmah, that lightning flash. It brings it in a way that it's like in the seed, it's so real that it becomes then automatic reality in the emotions. The example that I have, at least, of this is that Rebbe once Purim, by Purim Farbrengen, I think it was 1958, said a lot of l'chaim. And he said that the Tzemach Tzedek, and people saw how he was like exuberant in a unusual way. That was very obvious. And then he said that Tzemach Tzedek once said a lot of l'chaim, and then he took his hand over his head, and he just went like that and thought about the greatness of God in a flash. Not at Bina is not in a flash, right? Bina is it's developed, right? And did it for Chachma, and then brought upon himself the fear of heaven and the effect of the alcohol completely was removed from him. And the Rebbe did that telling over the story, but telling over a story that happened with him. Because right after that, he went into a very deep, profound Talmudic pilpul, which when someone is, it's not naturally where you would go into very, fine detail of teaching of Talmudic and Talmudic debate. It was completely removed from him. It was like completely different. How did that happen? He didn't meditate enough because the higher level of das is able to take in that brief moment something and have an immediate emotional effect. That's a very lofty level already. And with that, we conclude the 15th letter. And with this, we can now understand from my flesh, I can perceive God. From this teachings, we can get a deeper and more, appreciative understanding of the ways of Hashem within the world, because now we have an appreciation of the way our soul works within our body, with our intelligence and our emotions. So likewise, God, the funnel that he funnels himself into this world is through Chabad above, Chabad of Atzilus, and the 7 emotions in the world of Atzilus. They are the conduit for everything in creation. But at least we get a little bit, right? Will it become easier for us when Mashiach comes? Yes, everything comes easier when Mashiach comes. Henya, is it possible that the discipline comes from love instead of judgment and fear? Yes, but the judgment itself is not an act of kindness in and of itself. It's motivated by it. Yes, correct. It can be, absolutely. Okay.
Now the rational thinking is like is our divine soul, right?
No.
No, it's lower than that.
Our rational thinking? No. Is it rational to want to cleave to God because God is God? Not rational. That there's no rationality to that.
Yeah.
It just is, right?
Yeah. So is this tractate talking about using like your rational capacities through these different sphero in terms of like having das or like connecting to Hashem through these different means, like Chakma, for instance? I'm just trying to understand how the rational thinking connects with all these different examples that were just given.
This was not rational. That was what previous classes that we spoke about when a parent wants to teach a child, right? And then we spoke then about using your Chabad and using your emotions. We spoke about that, right? That was different. That was that there was a rationality behind it, right? So we spoke about Netzach and Hod being grounding, taking the idea and making it simple, so there would be it would be palatable for the child. It won't be too much. You won't overload. That's all rational, right? No, it's rational. That's a rationality behind it, right? To do that, right? Here we didn't give a rationality because you want to cleave to God. It's not a rationality, right?
Yeah.
Why do you want to cleave to God? Because that's the nature of the soul, the way God made it, that's what it wants.
Yeah.
Right? So that's not a rationale.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an explanation, but it's not a rationality.
Okay.
Right. Right. A rationality means it's because it leads to something more. So I have to break down the teachings now for you, right? Because if I give you too much and if I didn't give it over properly, then you're not going to learn.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the rational soul that is coming to that. It's not coming because of a desire to cleave. right?
Yeah.
And that's how it's come. At least in me, I want to cleave to God, so I'm explaining it to you this way. Right. Now, it could come from a cleaving. I mean, that's a very high level of devotion here,
Yeah.
right? It could come from there, but that the fact that I feel the nefesh maskel doesn't mean it's bad, not at all. It just means it's not pure divinity.
Yeah, okay.
Right? It's not pure divinity. There's well, yeah, but it's the good klipa. We're taking the good out of it. Klipa's noiga has good in it, so we're taking the good out of it. The fact that I want to make sure that you understand, right? If it was purely that I want it because I want to cleave to God and help you to cleave to God, then fine. But it might be coming from my sense of duty, right? To that a sense of duty, which that's a rationality, a sense of duty might be maybe, I don't know, I got to think more about that. I mean, we need a little more. Or like my sense of fulfillment that I have, and then that's a rational thing that therefore leads me. It's not purely so I should cleave to God, right? Uh, or sometimes it could be that we reach there as like because to cleave to God means to do that which God needs of me. So if we're purely motivated by that, but we're probably motivated by a mixture of things,
Yeah.
but it's important to know this. So how can we be nothing and at the same time have love and a value of other? Why would we have to love? Would we have love of nothing? Well, no. So you have the love of God because he's everything. And if I have the love of God and he's everything, and that's why I love another, so then it's coming from the love of God, right? That's a high level. That's a high level. I don't think we should fool ourselves and think we have that completely. May again have parts of that, a little bit of it, right? But we don't fully have that. Does that make sense?
You're having the love of the other because that's what Hashem wants you to have, not because
No, because you have a love of Hashem, not because of that. Because you have a love of God. And if you have a love of God, so you're going to have a love of that which is also a part of God, another neshama.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, no, yeah.
Right? But it's coming from first the love of God.
Yeah.
Right? But we're not. We love another because we appreciate somebody, so you love them, right? Do we love them also for their neshama? Yeah, to some degree. But let's not fool ourselves that that's not all it is or what it is. Does that make
That's what we're striving for. That should be the.
Well, yeah, that's what we need to know the truth is.
Yeah.
Right. So same way as it isn't the same meaning in English as it would be in Hebrew. Klum. No, nothing here means bittul, not, which is to say nothing is also something. How necessary is it we be inebriated while connecting to God? We shouldn't be inebriated. Well, sometimes you say l'chaim by a fabringen is in order that you can get to a deeper place in ourselves. That's why we say one of the reasons we say l'chaim, right? To allow the exterior of me to kind of fall away so I can touch a deeper place within. All right, amazing. Okay, Rambam coming up.
No 16?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Thank you. We begin the 16th letter. This is about tzedakah, charity, a very powerful lesson. How responsible are we for each other? The Torah comes to teach us. So my beloved, my brethren and friends, who are to me like my own soul. He says, I know the hardships of the times. It's not hidden from me. That the earning of a livelihood is on a decline. Some people have without any providers at all, no work available for either husband or wife. And they literally have to borrow in order to eat. May God show compassion and speedily bring them a respite from their straits. Nonetheless, listen to what the Alter Rebbe says over here. Nonetheless, they're not acting rightly for their souls because he heard reports that they are not giving charity. Here, their hand is not open to give with a full hand and generous eye to satisfy those who are completely destitute. Referring to the fund that he was collecting for the people in Israel. The people who lived in Israel, Siddim that lived in Israel, Israel at the time under the Ottoman Empire was completely destitute. People couldn't even grow things there. It was so rocky terrain, arid, nothing. Right? If we won't have pity on them, he says, heaven forfend, who will? Even though you're having great difficulties. That which is written so that your brother may live with you. Now, there's a ruling in the Torah, right? That if you're in the desert and you have a pitcher of, you have a water bottle, and your friend doesn't, and that water bottle is enough just for you, for one person to live. So your life takes precedence. Why? Because it's your water bottle. If you shared the water bottle, it's a very, ethereal law over here. But if you were to share the water bottle, both of you would die. You would not make it. One of you drinks it, then you will live. So the law is the one who has it, they take precedence, right? So that's when there isn't enough water for both of you. In other words, it means like this. If you're both on equal status, both needing water to live, so then your life takes precedence. But, says the Alter Rebbe, if it's about you having meat for Shabbos, chicken for Shabbos, fish for Shabbos, and others not having milk for the children to drink, they don't even have basics for their children to have, right? Bread, literally bread, or firewood in the winter so you don't freeze. And you're going to have fish on Shabbos, your life doesn't take precedence. That's the Jewish way. I'm speaking to myself, right? That doesn't exist anywhere else, such a concept. In the Talmud, it tells us a story that there was a river that went through two communities. So the community that it goes through first has dibs on it first. That's if they need it equally like the other community, if they both need it for drinking water. And there wasn't enough water from that river to maintain two communities.
That has it first.
So the one who gets it first. But if the first community needs it for washing their clothes, and the second needs it for drinking water, the first community is not allowed to use that water. Yeah. Even though it comes through them first, they're not allowed to use it because the second community needs it for essential things for life. And that's today's class.
Wow. I don't really get how this applies to the family that has no means of income and yet they're expected to give to other people.
Tomorrow, when you come back, you'll find out. All right. Reminder, tonight, 6:30, there'll be Torah studies. Please come and join us. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine coming to you from Chabad, Zichron Kadesh in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. And Rambam is coming up now. Come and join us. Have a great Shavua Tov.